My name is Pam Kleinpeter. I'm the library director, and today I'm going to talk to you about plagiarism and how to avoid it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to define plagiarism so that you know exactly what it is. Plagiarism happens when you use someone else's words, their thoughts, or their ideas, and you don't give them proper credit. And this can be intentional or unintentional. There are lots of times where people don't intend to plagiarize. There are sometimes instances where people are trying to take credit for someone else's words, thoughts, or ideas. But whether it's intentional or unintentional, it's still a very serious academic offense. It is considered cheating, and the punishments can be severe. The mild form of punishment is getting a 0 on your paper, and then it can get more severe beyond that, depending on frequency of plagiarism and the extent of it. So plagiarism is a bad idea because when it comes down to it, plagiarism is stealing, and stealing is not cool. No one likes to be stolen from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you how you can avoid plagiarism. So the best way to avoid plagiarism is to always give proper credit to your sources, and you do that by using correct citations. Before we talk about exactly what citations are and how you use them, there are a couple of things that we need to talk about in terms of what needs a citation and what doesn't. So when it comes to things that are considered common knowledge, those are the things that an average person would know without having to look them up, and they're usually just simple facts. State capitals, government officials. Most people know these things without having to look them up, and so they're considered common knowledge and they don't require citations. It can, however, vary by profession. So there are things that would be considered common knowledge to a teacher that is different from common knowledge for a doctor, that is different from common knowledge for a general person in society. A good rule of thumb to use is that if you had to look it up, if you didn't already know it, then it wasn't common knowledge to you. And when in doubt, you should always include a citation. One of the clearest examples of when you need to cite something that most people already kind of instinctually understand is when you're using a direct quote. So most people already know that if you're copying something word for word, you should put them in quotation marks, and it requires a citation. So the way that that works is if you're quoting something someone has said, if you're pulling information directly out of a book, word for word, you put quotation marks around it, and then you put an in-text citation at the end of that when it appears in your paper. And we'll talk a little bit more about exactly what in-text citations are and how they work in a minute. So for example, if I were writing a paper about libraries and I wanted to quote something from a book about libraries, one sentence in my paper might be, one of my favorite quotes about libraries is, every time you enter a library, you might say to yourself, the world is quiet here, as a sort of pledge proclaiming reading to be the greater good. So as you can see, I used quotation marks because I did pull this word for word from a book. I also have my citation at the end. You might hear them called parenthetical citations because most of the time they use parentheses. And this particular one is made up of the author's last name and the page number from the book. An in-text citation should be just enough information so that you can find the full reference citation at the end of your paper, which would include author's name, title, year of publication, all of those things. All of those things that would make you able to find that particular resource if you wanted to check this piece of information. Where it starts to get kind of murky is in paraphrasing. So you might wonder, if I'm putting this in my own words, then I shouldn't have to cite it, should I? Because those are my words. And that is a valid point, and it can be confusing. But what you need to understand is that when it comes to citation, when it comes to giving credit, you don't only give credit when you're giving a direct quote. You should be able to put other people's ideas in your own words. It's actually a very good indication that you understand the things that you've heard or read. But paraphrasing, while it doesn't require quotation marks because it's not a direct quote, you did change the words, it does require an in-text citation. And that's because you're not only required to use citations when you're using someone else's exact words, you're also required to use citations when you're talking about someone else's thoughts and ideas. So you still need to give credit, whether you've changed the wording or not. Those thoughts and those ideas did not come from you. They did not originate with you. And so if you don't give a citation, what you're doing, whether you mean to or not, is you're trying to pass off those thoughts and ideas as your own original ideas when they're not. So we've talked about citations. How exactly do citations work? Citations sometimes seem like it's one thing. Most people, when they hear the word citation, they think about a list of references at the end of their paper. And that's one part of it, but it is a two-step process. So the first part is the in-text citation, that little brief thing that you put in parentheses that tags the information that you're using as you use it in your paper. But that's not enough information if someone wanted to go back and find that resource again. But if you included an entire reference citation with all of the publication information, your paper would be unreadable. That's why it's a two-step process. The in-text citation tags that information and gives you just enough to lead you to where the full publication information can be found at the end of your paper. And it could be called a bibliography, a reference page, works cited page. So one thing to keep in mind is that there are different citation styles. Different disciplines have their own way of documenting things and giving them credit. So if you're taking an English class, you're going to learn MLA style, MLA citations. MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. That is the group that researches and teaches English. So when you're taking an English class, that's why you learn MLA. And the style refers not only to the way that you cite your sources, it also refers to the way that the paper is organized and laid out. If you go to psychology, you'll probably run into APA style. APA is the American Psychological Association. So they use a lot of the same information, but the way that they format things is a little bit different. And most of our online library resources will at least give you the options of MLA and APA. And they will give you a reference citation that you can put at the end of your paper. So let's take a look. These are MLA and APA citations, reference citations that go at the end of your paper for the same book. As you can see, they're very similar. So for example, both of them start out with the author's information, but the MLA wants a full first name. APA is fine with having a first initial. The title is exactly the same. The publisher is in a slightly different location, but still the same. The date is a little bit different. MLA wants it at the end without parentheses. APA wants it at the front right after the author's name in parentheses. And then when it comes to the place of publication, MLA doesn't need that at all, but APA does want it. And the similarities and differences also carry over into articles. So for example, the date. For a journal article, MLA wants month, day, and year. APA is fine just having the year. When it comes to the volume and issue information, MLA wants VOL for volume, NO for number. APA doesn't want that. They just want numbers, but they want the volume italicized and they want the number in parentheses. And then when it comes to page numbers, when it comes to the title of the article, MLA wants it in quotation marks, APA doesn't. And for page numbers, MLA wants PP as an abbreviation for the page numbers, and APA doesn't. So in-text citations lead you to full references at the end of your paper. It is a two-step process. You can't use one and not the other. The in-text citations are brief and they appear right next to the information as you have used it in your paper. And it's just enough to lead you to the complete reference citation at the end of the paper. They work together, so both are required. If you just had an in-text citation, that's not enough publication information to be able to find a particular resource. However, if you don't include the in-text citations and you just list the references at the end, there's no way to know what pieces of information you used and where you used them in your paper. So you must use both. Providing a list of references at the end of your paper is not enough. You have to indicate where you have used that information with the in-text citations. And the in-text citations are a little bit different. In MLA, the author's last name and the page number is all that is required. In APA, you're expected to use, for a book in this example, the author's last name, date of publication, as well as page number. And those will change based on what the resource is and how much information is available about it. So that is a quick overview of how you use citations to avoid plagiarism. But we know that this is a tricky topic, so there is help available to you. We highly recommend the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or you may even hear it called the Purdue OWL. They have lots of great information, tons of examples for both MLA and APA. We've also made our own LibGuide. When it comes to citation, we provide information about MLA, APA, and we've also included information for AMA style, which is the American Medical Association, as well as Chicago style, which you may run into in history, but it's not as widely used around here. If you are on the LibGuide, we do have a tab that you can click on to access our LibChat feature. So if you see the little tab that says Questions, Ask Us, it will open up a LibChat box, and if someone is live and logged in, you can ask us questions from there. If no one is live and logged in, you can still submit a question. You can also access our LibChat by going to our help page. And again, if someone is live and logged in, you'll see this nice little pop-up box show up, and you can hit chat now or no thanks. If no one is live and logged in, you can still submit a question. You can also, when we're not live and logged in, you can search our frequently asked questions to see if you can find an answer there. And if you don't, you can submit a question from here. So that is a quick overview on how to avoid plagiarism. And remember, the credible Hulk always cites his sources.